Welcome to the Kernel of Truth. I'm Colonel Conrad Reynolds, and welcome to the show. I was listening for the music. That's what it was. But everything is great. We have a special guest today, ladies and gentlemen, Senator Wendy Rogers out of Arizona. Now, she's been on the show before, but I don't know if you've been watching the news the last couple of weeks, but there's a lot of things happening in Arizona, and we've been out there, but I just want to talk about with some of the highlights about what has gone on last week. And Senator Rogers, welcome to our program.
Great to be back, Colonel. And we loved having you out here in Arizona. We're in a great collaborative relationship with your organization, AVII, and we're really glad to be moving forward together.
Absolutely. Well, the AVII hand count, we'll talk about that later and talk about what went on and what you're doing out there, because we're excited about that. We have a county here in Arkansas that's going to be using the very same system, and they're very excited. And in fact, they're going to do a practice session, later this week and in February in preparation for our primary, which is in March. But before we get to that, I would like to get your take on the big news that happened last week. It was revealed that there was a offer, if you will, by the Republican Party chair to Kari Lake to get her to not run, to back out, to go to pause for 2 years. Obviously, as he said, big, powerful people back east don't want you running. That's what he told to Kari Lake, and said, guess what? They're not going to let you win. So how much is it going to cost? What? Tell me what you know about that.
Well, actually, I know some detail. I was with Kari and her husband and her team just Saturday at the state GOP meeting. So I had a chance to really go over some of the background detail with her. And in summary, DeWitt, who I've known as an acquaintance over the years, apparently, as the audio tape indicates, went to her home and made her this offer. Now, you might ask, and I kind of wondered and asked her this, why did it take so long to put this out? And the answer really is twofold. Number one, she did talk about this publicly at CPAC and I think elsewhere, that she had been approached by someone to her home asking her to stay out of politics going forward after the governor's race, which was stolen from her, as we all know. And so we all knew the narrative. And my husband and I were even talking about how we had always pictured this person, whoever he or she was, coming to her home. Well, then she and her husband and their daughter were having dinner one night, and they were thinking about the past. And you have to realize that Kari Lake meets with people all the time. And because she's a national figure, a lot of interactions get recorded. I mean, if someone comes to her home when her team meets and so forth, they record nearly everything just for documentary purposes and to have a record.
Right.
So that was not unusual. And this whole narrative about, can we trust her because she records conversations? That's all in a day's work that she does routinely anyway because of her position and to record and chronicle everything. And that's a smart thing to do. So anyway, she told me 2 or 3 times in the last few days, she said, we never really thought about it as a family. And then it came to mind, so we went back to listen to that segment of time. And she said her daughter, who's in her early 20s, very astute young woman, said, Mom, who was that? And I hope that person isn't in politics. And her mother said, oh, that person's in politics, dear. He's still the head of the Arizona GOP. And she said her daughter was just mortified. And I know my daughter would be too in this kind of thing. And so it took a lot of guts, honestly, for Kari to reveal this. It wasn't a snap decision, even upon rehearing it and how terrible it was. And I've talked to people who, some of whom you both know, in terms of the deliberation and the struggle she had to decide to reveal it. she finally did reveal it. And, that was in and of itself kind of a brave thing to do, because there invariably would be some kind of backlash.
Well, we heard in the audio that Jeff DeWitt was even worried. He alluded to his car being blown up if he disclosed the people he was dealing with.
Yes, and so he is doing their bidding and was afraid for himself and afraid, as you say, for his personal safety, and saying that there are, nefarious forces in all 50 states and all this kind of thing. So it was he who sort of elucidated all of the fear factors in this scenario. And she has always said that the cartels did not want her elected, and has always maintained that Arizona political officials in many cases are co-opted by the cartels. So all of this underscores those notions. And so I get asked, well, is it right? Is it fair? It's the truth. I mean, the audio spoke for itself. So then we went through this whole struggle, I guess you could say, within the party these last few days on how the replacement process would go. He actually didn't resign right away. I was astounded by the fact that when he did resign, he then didn't even move out of the building until Friday, which made it very awkward and untenable for the follow-on process to be planned. So this was all a very tumultuous struggle here at the Phoenix capital area and across the state, really, because there was some talk of another gentleman filling the shoes, and then everything changed Saturday when President Trump got involved, and rightfully so. He's the titular head of the party. By extension, arguably, Kari Lake is here in the state, and so President Trump got involved and called Gina Swoboda, Swoboda, Gina Swoboda, who now, of course, is the party chair. He called her, and up till this point, she said, I'll serve wherever I'm asked, but I'm not going to, voluntarily run for chair. She was the existing third vice chair, so intimately familiar with party workings. And so anyway, President Trump called her. I asked her how that call went. She basically said she was told he was going to call. He called her during the day, Friday. The meeting was Saturday. And he essentially said, I need you. I need you to lead. I need you to win Arizona, which is fundamentally indispensable to our victory. And I want you to lead, and will you fight? And of course, she said, I'll fight like heck. They're both New Yorkers, incidentally.
You probably didn't say heck.
So it was a little spicier. Yeah. And so they definitely understood one another. And President Trump's a brawler, okay? And he wants people who are going to fight and be unequivocal, and that is Gina Swoboda. But also, you have to understand, I work with Gina every day. And you say, well, how is that? She works for the Arizona Senate as a subject matter expert and my close advisor in the elections committee. And she's on contract. She's paid for 5 months to be really the brains of the operation. You could say I'm the sort of the bullish brawn of the operation because a lot of negotiations are happening right now. And I'll speak to that in a minute, going forward with plugging some of the election integrity gaps. But she is so versed on election law. People think she's a lawyer when she's not. She's smarter than most of the lawyers working on these issues. And we have precious few because the Bar Association likes to sanction them. But anyway, that's another six-pack story. She is an amazing brain and mind. Also, she has a very diplomatic, winsome way in getting along with people. So there's no one more well qualified than she. She also, and this was brought up on social media and I whacked it down, one of our detractors on social media was saying, oh, well, she worked for the Secretary of State's office back when it was, under questionable leadership. Well, don't you think she made relationships back then? Don't you think those relationships are helpful now? You always want to be able to call upon subject matter experts with relationships that you've had in the past. And she has those. Everyone who interacts with her, and I study this. I was a social worker. I study body language and human behavior just naturally. And I noticed that everyone who interacts with her has a very positive feeling toward her and knows that her intentions are noble. She wants to have equitable, fair elections regardless. And so we're so lucky that we have someone of her caliber to be able to step into the shoes. And it was a torturous week, and it was a lot of wrangling and a lot of gnashing of teeth. And now, just to kind of conclude, there is some angst against what happened among the grassroots and how they feel like they had kind of the rug pulled out from under them and had outside interests sort of dictate who would become our party chair. But the long and the short of it is they'll get over that, and we have to look at the big picture. This is necessary. The Band-Aid, apparently, as you could hear in the audio, needed to be ripped off, and we needed to move forward. And I would just say as one final statement, which I've said on a lot of national broadcasts, the timing couldn't be better because we have 10 months left. God forbid that we would not have known this until much later than now, because now is when we can still make a difference. We can retool and we can come together and go forward, because a lot of this is legal understanding. A lot of it is where to put the finances. And you have someone like Rana at the head of the national GOP who's not well regarded.
Derelict of duties there.
Yeah.
Yes. And so now what you need is at least someone at the state level who can lead and counter some of that national problem.
Well, I'm excited that you got somebody that obviously you're vouching for, which tells me everything I need to know, in that you've worked with her, and she is intimately aware and knowledgeable of what goes on. But the other guy had to go. I mean, there was no question that Jeff DeWitt had to go. What I want to know is who was it that made him go and make this offer? I wish he would be more forthcoming and share that. I mean, in the audio that I heard, she gave him an opportunity. She said, we need to make this public. We need to go public with this. And you need to, no. Can't do that. Why not? Boy, he could have changed the whole thing if he'd have said, you know what, you're right. We're going to expose these people because this is wrong. It's corruption. We're going to make sure that these people don't have a say in our political world here in Arizona. But unfortunately, he didn't do that. He went along with the people that sent him there, and it backfired. And he's found out now that that's not going to be tolerated. And I respect the people of Arizona for standing up. People like you, people like Wendy, Kari, who are fighting against that. Listen, we're going to come back. We're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come back because I got a lot more questions for you about what's going on in Arizona. So we'll be right back with the Kernel of Truth with our special guest, Wendy Rogers, Senator Wendy Rogers out of Arizona, in just 1 minute. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Kernel of Truth. I'm Colonel Conrad Reynolds here with our special guest, Senator Wendy Rogers out of Arizona.
Also another colonel.
Lieutenant Colonel, Air Force Lieutenant Colonel Wendy Rogers. And I just love the fact that you're military, because, that's my language. That's my first language, is military and then politics. But thank you for joining us. And I want to talk a little bit about your hand count that you had on the 13th using the avii.org process. We were out there, had a great time, but you came too. And so I'd like for you to tell our audience what you observed, what you think about that hand count. And then I understand you had one this last weekend.
Yes. Well, again, it was great to have you all come out and work together with us. avii.org has just been instrumental in helping us to make that happen. 3 weeks ago, we did the Maricopa County GOP annual meeting hand count. And that was up in the top floor of this mega church in North Phoenix, where about 1,600 precinct committeemen voted. And we were really happy to see that occur in 1 hour. Multiple races, 5 races counted with full transparency. And the ballots came in groups of 25 and then would be counted at a 4-person table where someone would say what the vote was, the other person would confirm it, and then 2 people would tally the votes. And then these results would be signed off from station to station, collected and sent to an aggregator. I actually got to participate in that process when it was done again this past Saturday at the state meeting, which was at the same mega church with the same upstairs setup. And interestingly, that was more at the last minute needing to be set up, which spoke to its efficacy even better. Because in that scenario, bylaws had to be amended from the floor, as I could perceive, to allow it to occur that day. So what happened was, and I was a little bit privy to this 2 nights ahead of time at Craig Berlin's house, hearing how this was coming together, Craig Berlin being the chair of the Maricopa County GOP, that group of experts, Shelby Bush with We the People AZ Arizona Alliance, who collaborated with avii.org, our half, if you will, of the expertise here in Arizona. They were cocked and ready, as we say in Air Force aviation parlance. They were cocked and ready to stand up the hand count 2 days later for the state GOP meeting if the bylaws could be amended on the floor to enable it. And sure enough, it did get voted on to be able to occur Saturday morning on the floor. And then that operation stood up very, very quickly. Now you're saying to me, well, what is it more than just cardboard boxes and people and tables? It's a lot more. What it is, in reality, are all of these cameras that are focused, 2 different cameras upon each table to chronicle everything that's happened, backups to the backup, if you will. And this provides full documentation and full transparency. And what was interesting to me this past Saturday was A, to see it stood up so quickly, and B, to see the look on the face of a former state senator colleague of mine who's now running for Maricopa County Supervisor, who had been a little bit on the fence as to the scalability and the viability of such a process. And she was on the outside of the event when I saw her early in the morning, and she said, Wendy, can you get me in? I said, sure, follow me. And I made sure that whole day that she was exposed to how good of a process this is. I had her talk to various people because she's, up until now, not really been a MAGA politician, as it were, and not really sort of in the cause and I dare say kind of believing the efficacy of such a process. And anyway, so I told her, I said, you need to come upstairs and watch. Well, she not only watched, she quizzed everybody. She walked around, she watched everything. And I was telling friends of mine yesterday, the Slaytons up in Show Low, who are dear friends and supporters of the cause and of me. And of course, Steve Slayton's running for state rep in my district. And I told them yesterday morning, I kind of gave them a download of everything. And I said, if one hugely positive thing came out of Saturday, it was that I could show one of the probable future Maricopa County supervisors the whole scene here of how a hand count day of paper ballot process can work, then I've really achieved something. And by the way, it was not only she, but two other currently elected officials. So there were four of us in the room the entire time Saturday watching this play out. In fact, I was asked to sit at a table and be a tallier, which was really fun. And I'm a hands-on learner, so I really got to see up close and personal by participating how it was done. And this is all to say, and then the four of us got together and we sort of did the arithmetic real quick. And we said among ourselves, wait a minute, so with about 100 people total, this can be done at the precinct level to combine two precincts of 2,000 people voting, roughly 1,000 voters per precinct, and could be legitimately tallied and reported within 2 hours because it's 1 hour per 1,000 ballots.
And that takes away that argument where people say they're going to be there till 5 a.m. counting ballots.
Yeah.
Yeah, this process is so logical and replicatable and scalable, rather, that it's absolutely doable. So now we have two examples. We have the Maricopa County GOP event that you all came out for, and now we have the state GOP event that it was done at again, but arguably in a different way, had to be stood up at a moment's notice and still could be carried out. So I was really proud. There was some struggle on things, and it had to wait 2 hours to get started. But once it was started, it was like clockwork. And I had people come up to me from really rural Arizona, a part of my state that I knew of years ago when I ran for Congress, and all these guys were still in my smartphone, which is what I'm known for. And so they came up to me and said, "Oh, Wendy, it's been 8 years since we've seen you, and how you doing?" And I had to kind of remember who they were, but they're from Apache County, which is one of the poorest counties in the country, on the border between Arizona and New Mexico. And, they came over to me and I said, "Great to see you guys. What are you doing here?" And what they were doing was they were wanting to learn how to do it for their county. And then there was another contingent of people from a county that I do represent, Gila County, which has Payson and Globe in it. And they were there to learn. So the word is getting out that this works. This is the model.
Right. Well, that's fantastic. I love it. I love it. I love being there. Everything that happened was great. The chain of custody, all the way through the final counting to the final count, and the enthusiasm that I witnessed was unbelievable. And I think that people were excited about taking back their own elections and not having some unknown entity, a black box counting your vote and telling you what the vote is. So we're going to take a break. We're going to be right back because I got a couple of other questions for you. I hope you can stay with us in another segment. We got other things we want to talk about in Arizona. I'm Colonel Conrad Reynolds with the Colonel of Truth. I'm here with Senator Wendy Rogers, and we'll be right back after these messages. All right, welcome back to the Colonel of Truth. I'm here with my special guest, Senator Wendy Rogers, also Lieutenant Colonel Rogers from the United States Air Force. She is currently the chair of the Elections Committee there in the Arizona Senate. And we're trying to pick her brain to find out what it is that Arizona is doing to fix their elections. And so, Senator Rogers, again, welcome back. And can you give us a little idea of what you're doing in the state Senate there?
Well, as the Elections Committee chair, I have the distinct honor of negotiating a bill that we hope will come up in a special session this coming week, or this week that we're starting today. A special session has to be called by the governor, and the counties. The need for it originated from the counties having a problem with the 2024 calendar, which has an anomalous setup of dates to where some of the statutorial requirements can't be met in terms of having enough days if there's a request for a recount and so forth. So the counties came to us and presented this and essentially said, will you, the state legislature, help us repair this problem? And this occurred months ago, and it presented a unique window into an opportunity to not only assuage concerns with the calendar, but also plug some gaps. And so we're working very strongly with the counties and ultimately with the governor to craft a solution that all three entities can live with. I think what I want to also underscore, though, and this happened at the end of the last week behind closed doors, the counties, of which there are only 15 in Arizona, and of course I represent 4 of them, so I have in some respects kind of an outsized role, but moreover the role as chair of the elections committee for the Senate, and then of course I have a counterpart, a state rep across the way in the House, who's the chair of the House Elections Committee. And she is also a very strong-willed, tough negotiator, as am I. And the counties are so-called represented by this lobbying organization, which claims to sort of speak for all 15 counties. But what we have often found is that they allegedly speak with one voice, but may not actually have the buy-in from all 15 counties. And I took this representative of the county organization to task last week when she kept making these sweeping generalizations as a basis for her negotiating points. And I think she was a little astounded by my knowledge, because I've campaigned in northern Arizona, for example. She made this one sweeping generalization. We were trying to, how do I say this, craft a solution where the last 3 days of voting, which are reserved for emergencies, but it has morphed into just everybody voting in the last 3 days, and we want to button that back up. And she was saying it would disenfranchise Native Americans, she thought. And I said, when you use the words "I think," what data are you basing that on? And she couldn't answer me. And then I went into how the Navajo Nation gets its information, and they certainly could be educated to adapt to our solution, contrary to what she was saying. And this is what the left does. They don't attribute any smarts or ingenuity to those that they claim become disenfranchised, when the opposite is true. Because in the Navajo Nation, for example, I know, because I've bought advertising there, it takes a third longer to say something in Navajo than it does in English. I know because I've bought the ads and paid the translator. And they, in large part, get their information from one AM radio station that will tell them where to go at a certain town location on a certain day of the week to vote at a mobile voting center where also lunch will be provided. And in large part, many of them who live in that area of the reservation will go to that one place and do as they were informed. And so I countered her narrative in that one negotiating segment as to how folks who are in far-flung locations can and do get accurate, focused information. But again, I hearken back to this whole situation where the left tries to hijack our elections, and they try to couch it in terms of racism or disenfranchisement. And so when those kinds of narratives are debunked by those of us who are out in the field knocking doors and who know the truth, they just don't know what to do with themselves. And then finally, I'll sort of share something else that happened in those negotiations. And that was when she let it slip that she was negotiating with the governor's office. And I said, what? Excuse me? There are 3 branches of government: legislative, judicial, and the executive. You're not one of those branches. We will be the ones talking to the governor's office, not you. And she kind of, pulled back. But I'm elected, and my people are who I serve. And so don't you dictate to me as a lobbyist what you, A, think the truth is, and B, who you're negotiating with. Because I'm going to put a big size 8 footprint on your posterior for that, and we're not going to have it. And so this is why the Senate President, Warren Peterson, my colleague, said, that's why, Wendy, I've sent you and your counterpart from the House in here to negotiate these things, to plug these gaps, because the staff can't do it, the lobbyists can't do it. We, the strongly elected chairman of these 2 committees, will do it.
Right. Well,
we need bulldogs.
We need bulldogs, and that's why they need you in there. There's something you said in that was amazing to me. You said there's an association that speaks for 15 counties, and would that be the Association of Arizona Counties?
Yes, ACO.
ACO. Well, we have the very same thing here in Arkansas, Association of Arkansas Counties. And they do the same thing. Their motto is 75 counties, one voice. And they try to do they put themselves in the middle. They're a 501c3. They're not even a governmental agency. They're a nonprofit. But they put themselves in the middle as the person determining how much money the counties will get when it comes to federal grants. They help counties write federal grants, but they have a lot of power, and there's no one in that organization that's elected at all by any of the people.
And they use taxpayer money to lobby all the branches of the government, and they're pretty much like a union for the counties. It's really interesting how it works.
Yeah. They take 1% of the revenue from the counties, and the counties have to volunteer, say, yes, we want to be a part of it, but they get a 1% turn back to the AAC, this Association of Arkansas Counties. And I will tell you, most of the people in the county, the justice of the peace, the county judge, none of them know how much money they're paying.
It's kind of an eternal opt-in. You opt in once and you never have to opt in again. You have to opt out to stop giving them your money.
Yeah, so it is a system that really needs to be investigated. We really need to look into it here. But I see that in other states now, in Florida, I mean, all over. And they have this thing called the National Association of Counties in Washington, D.C., that basically is the umbrella organization for all of these state associations. It's an amazing entity. I want to talk about that a little bit more in the next segment, but and because I'm really interested in how they are wielding their power in Arizona, kind of what they're doing right here in Arkansas. So we'll be right back with Senator Wendy Rogers here on the Kernel of Truth. We'll be right back in just a few minutes. All right, welcome back to the Kernel of Truth. I'm Colonel Conrad Reynolds with our guest today, Senator Wendy Rogers out of Arizona. And Senator Rogers, continue on with what you were telling us a little bit about the Association of Arizona Counties, the kind of power that they have, and what you're trying to do to fix elections in Arizona.
Well, thanks for the question, because this has been a concern ongoing with not just elections, but the power that this organization does seem to try to wield. And even my husband, who watches from online at home, he loves to say it's better than Netflix. But, it's high drama, because I think for once now they are seeing that we're just not having it. And I had an interesting conversation the night before the state meeting, so Friday night, with a GOP activist out in Young, Arizona, which is in the middle of nowhere, but it's in my district. And she said, we feel so cut off. People are losing faith, and they don't really want to participate anymore. And we're particularly disenchanted with our county supervisors. And they have 3 in that county. Usually it's either 3 or 5. And I said, what's the problem? And she enumerated all these concerns with short-term rentals and how the laws against them are overreaching and draconian because of a county ordinance. And so I said, well, what about your county supervisors? Are you not telling them what you think? And she said, oh, Senator, we beat them up in these meetings, and they just don't do anything. They've been there forever. They collect their whatever it is, $85,000 a year salary. And in my words, I think she was saying that they were kind of corporatist statist types of politicians, and I would agree. And so what you have here is an organization, as we said, whose members say they speak with one voice, and then opposite that, you have the elected officials who they say they represent, but they allow themselves to be spoken for because they're comfortable.
It makes it easier.
Because they go to these meetings and just kind of sweat it out and don't do anything and don't listen. According to her, they don't listen to her or her fellow townsfolk, even though they are asked to come, asked to respond, and asked to do certain things to ameliorate their concerns. So you have these sort of sheep who are okay with being spoken for. And it takes two parties like this, the assertive, vocal, one who has vested interests, left-leaning as they are, honestly. And then you have these go along to get along politicians who are elected by the people and who should be doing the bidding of the people, but don't.
You know, a couple things I've seen with these associations of counties is it's almost like they're fighting for some of the bigger corporate banking interests. But we even heard a story in Florida where ES&S was paying people from the Association of Counties there to make sure the voting machines get into the counties. Then they were getting kickbacks for the voting machines they were getting. So in your Arizona situation, do you think hotels and these things are having a say in putting the squash on Verbos and Airbnbs?
Not so much. I think that's a really whole nother topic. And what I ended up doing was connecting her to the lobbyist for Airbnb, who I happen to know and admire. He's a former state senator, Army officer, fluent German speaker, really a great guy who takes late night calls and who's trying to make this work. And just real quickly, as background, 2 years ago, a bill was passed. Well, further back than that, the state passed a bill that essentially just let it be a free-for-all. And what happened was all these towns and cities were being transformed by all this real estate being bought up, people having parties all night, and nothing able to be done about it. And so what happened 2 years ago was there was a state bill that he worked very hard on, which was a good start, that gave cities and towns more power to tailor the short-term rental industry to their needs in their town. But what has apparently happened, and I haven't dived into it minutely, but what's apparently happened in this one county case, where it's not a city and town situation, but the county, they've asserted this really strict rule that every single guest has to have an in-depth background check. That's just onerous, and it's expensive, and it's impractical, and it's
impossible.
Right.
Yeah, it's dampened the flow of business into this little middle of nowhere town, which was getting good entrepreneurship going from it. So that was kind of a different problem, if you will, quote unquote, than say Sedona, which is a picturesque tourist town that has a crush of these people coming in. The one solution, I'm really getting into the weeds here, but it's illustrative. The one solution that, say, for example, Sedona has is to put a cap on short-term rentals and only have a percentage of real estate be allowed to be short-term rentals. But that flies in the face of the free market, and that flies in the face of property rights. So that's basically, honestly, dead on arrival probably in Arizona because of how we think about those situations. But then in the case of this little middle of nowhere town, they want this crush of Airbnb business. They need it. They don't want a cap on it, I would surmise.
Right.
But their county is dampening them down. So there's a lot of how the sausage is made to kind of satisfy everyone. And just in summation, my role in many cases is just to connect the subject matter experts with the people so that the people can be empowered, in this case of this little town of Young, Arizona, to go to their county and apply pressure. But then we have this conundrum with the county organization that is all too happy to speak for these, in my opinion, weak corporatist elected officials who, if they asserted and themselves and exerted their power, which we vest them with, things would be better.
Do you think they're really speaking for these people, or the people in the county government just are going along with what the association says? Because here in Arkansas, the association went and fought paper ballots, so everyone started parroting what the association was saying as their own position. Do you think that might be the way it's going?
I wouldn't be surprised, because Senator Sonny Borelli separately earlier this summer, I may have talked about this on a prior show with you, he and I went to that county supervisors meeting to promote the notion of our Senate concurrent resolution 1037 to get rid of the machines. And the three supervisors, this was the situation I think I did tell you, where they kept looking to the side of the dais to their county manager and to their county attorney and to their non-elected brain trust, who of course have an agenda of keeping the status quo.
Wow. Well, we really love what you're doing out there. You're fighting the hard fights, and you know, a lot of people don't understand. I mean, you know, you got so many things you're involved with as a state senator, and elections is one of them. But you have all these other things as well. And what is it? What did Mark Twain say? He said, "There's no vice that needs to be regulated more than the other guy's vice." Right? Everybody's got their own thing, and they want to protect it, and they want to get government to go after the other guy a lot of times. So they need good people like you to keep people straight.
And when we got to just keep, I think, the government out of the regulation business as much as we can, and let it, you know, just kind of, the free market needs to work. And I'm glad you're working towards that in Arizona.
So anything else anything else in Arizona, anything big coming out that we ought to know about, or you'd like to talk about concerning elections or election integrity? Or
Well, I would say stay tuned, because if anything is going to be revealed, it'll be from here.
Well, President Trump ended up canceling his visit to Arizona on Friday. Have you heard if he's coming back anytime soon, or is this just kind of a wait and see?
I think he will be coming back soon, and again after that. I do know that he will be coming sometime in a couple of months to support my Defend the Guard bill, which of course is another front, Conrad, that you and I are dearly in support of, which says that the National Guard cannot be deployed unless the United States Congress has declared war against a country where they would be deployed. And I don't have details yet, but sadly, we had, of course, 3 servicemen killed yesterday, I believe, in Jordan. And peripheral casualties were Arizona Guardsmen. And again, I don't have update on if they were Army or Air Force.
Right.
But we aren't at war in Jordan, so why are our troops there?
Exactly. And so what we have wending its way through my legislature here again, I got it through the Senate last year, is the so-called Defend the Guard bill. Now, interestingly, my bill did get through the Arizona Senate last year. It was a squeaker, and I had to do a lot of arm twisting, and then it never got heard in the House. I was on a Twitter space last night, and we talked about this in depth. We hope that it will be considered in the House this year. And what I'm especially proud of in the Senate, it hasn't been heard in committee yet. It will be soon. But I got every one of my other 15, we have 16 Republican senators out of 30, the 1-vote majority. I got every one of my 15 Republican senator colleagues to co-sponsor.
Oh, wow.
The Defend the Guard bill. So it's got great support, great momentum. And honestly, this is kind of how it goes sometimes. You have to introduce something and fight for it. And if it doesn't pass, you bring it back the next year. And then there's this sort of human acceptance of something that's been around the block once. There's a little more acceptance. So I'm running 27 bills, but I think 6 or 7 of them are reruns. And the reruns that I'm running did go through the Senate last year. So we're hoping that they'll get a little farther this year. Some of them got through the House too and then got vetoed. But it's my job to continue to speak for the people.
Well, if anybody can make it happen, I know it's you. There's no question in my mind. If it's possible, you'll make it work. Well, in our last minute, I got 2 questions for you. Number one, President Trump is going to be running, obviously, in the primary there in Arizona. And no question he's going to win the primary. What do you think his percentages will be? Is he going to win Arizona in the general? And what do you think his percentage will be?
I think that he will win. The question is, they will try to steal it. And then how can we, to what degree can we prevent the steal? And so with my efforts at the legislature and the winsome leadership that we now have with Gina Swoboda, I am cautiously optimistic that we can prevent the steal enough in Arizona for him to win Arizona.
Well, that's great. I think that's incredible. I think he will win Arizona. I think he'll win big. And I think the hand count that you are implementing, if you can get that statewide, is going to make a huge difference. Senator Rogers, thank you for joining us today. I'm Colonel Conrad Reynolds. We hope you come back to the Kernel of Truth. And that's all we have for this segment. But thank you so much. Have a great day. Give this video a thumbs up, if you will. Like and subscribe to our channel. Very important for us to spread this message to everybody, and I can't do it without your help. This is the Kernel of Truth, and I'm Colonel Conrad Reynolds, and thank you for joining us.